What up, Cucks? It's your boy, The Hater. And since I really enjoyed doing a WrestleMania 15 review, I figured why not do another old pay-per-view review. This one is one of my personal favorites of all time, right? Unlike most people, I thought that the Invasion angle was fucking awesome. This is one of those things that you had to be there, right? It's really that simple. If you weren't around back then and you started watching wrestling after WrestleMania 31 when Daniel Bryan, then you'll never understand how great this was, right? Now, granted, okay, we didn't get Goldberg and Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan yet, right? But it doesn't matter. It still felt like a big deal. The WWE or WWF champion was around, right? All the WWE stars were around, and a lot of WCW stars that were there were relevant. Like Booker T was their champion, you know what I mean? He was not a jobber by any means. So he was the number one WCW guy. Yes, it would have been better to have like Sting participate, right? But it wouldn't have made sense either. Everyone that participated had to be a heel, and Sting would not have made a very good heel at this point in his career, nor would Goldberg, nor would any of these other heroes, right? So maybe Kevin Nash and Scott Hall would have been nice, but we got them later, so it doesn't matter. Now, the premise of the Invasion angle was that WCW and then ECW joined forces to take over the WWE. Survivor Series, which was the pay-per-view that we're going to talk about today. Survivor Series of 2001 was supposed to be the culmination of this entire storyline. Headlined by a 5-on-5 traditional Survivor Series elimination match, winner take all. Either Vince is going to be the owner, or if you will, it's going to be, I guess, Shane and Stephanie McMahon. Now, another thing that I want to point out is that, personally, in my opinion, after this pay-per-view, that's when the Ruthless Aggression era started. When they started the brand split, that's what I consider to be the next logical era of WWE. The brand split era is a much better name than the Ruthless Aggression era, right? So anyways, it doesn't matter. Let's go through this. The stipulations of the pay-per-view overall also were as follows, right? I should talk about this for a second. So if you were a champion, you probably weren't going to get fired, right? So there was an incentive to be champion, and there was an incentive to stick around, right? Because you didn't know what was going to happen. And that was all addressed in the storyline. First up, we had Christian, who was the European champion and had defected to the Alliance. This was great. Versus Al Snow, representing WWF. Christian wins. So right there, the only negative I would say here is that because Christian won, you're like, oh, okay, like, you know, if like the Alliance was going to win, they'd give the title to Al Snow probably, and he would, retain his job. But it is what it is. Christian won. Next up, we had William Regal versus Tajiri. William Regal had defected to the Alliance, and Tajiri was great. This was a good time for Tajiri because even though he's like a WCW guy and he was aligned with Regal, he stayed true to WWE, motherfucks. Tajiri rules. However, William Regal of the Alliance beat Tajiri, who at this point was dating Tori Wilson, who had also defected to the WWF. Next up, we had Edge, who was the United States champion, versus Test, who was the Intercontinental champion of the Alliance, right? At this point, Edge beat Test, and Edge became the unified mid-card champion, basically. He became the United States and the Intercontinental champion. Next up, we had the tag team match. This was a great match. It was the Dudley Boys, motherfuckers. The Dudley Boys, who were the WCW tag team champions, versus the Hardy Boys, the WWF tag team champions. This was really good. This was a steel cage match, and this match told a big story. Number one, it was yet another chapter in the undying rivalry of the Dudleys and the Hardys, which also would include Edge and Christian throughout the majority of their run, right? Now, the finish of this match involved basically Jeff Hardy, and I think it was Devon, who were left in the ring, right? Jeff Hardy puts Devon on a table and climbs the cage. Matt Hardy's telling him, climb down the cage so we can become unified tag team champions, right? But instead, Jeff Hardy decides to do like a move. I think it was a swanton, and he misses. He goes through the table, and Devon just pins him. This was one of those matches where you could win by escape or by pinfall, right? So the story was told very efficiently. The idea was Jeff Hardy's recklessness cost the Hardy Boys their tag team titles, right? Which would be one thing, right, if it was just a random-ass tag match and they could go after the titles the next day, right? But that's not what happened here, right? The implications were far deeper. The idea was if the Alliance were to win the Survivor Series match, Jeff and Matt Hardy might be out of a job. So, with that being said, Jeff and Matt made a mistake here. Nevertheless, the match was good, and this kind of set up the entire Jeff versus Matt angle, which would go down as being a great angle that eventually led to Jeff Hardy's singles push. So all that shit started here in what could have been otherwise a throwaway tag team match. Now you compare that with the six-man ladder match, or the six-team ladder match that Triple H said could have been the greatest tag team match of all time, which is a complete fucking lie. It's not even, I wouldn't even put it like in above average tag team matches in WrestleMania history, right? I would consider it to be complete bullshit, right? And you know what? Even the Rock and Roman Reigns match, that also is not the best tag team match of all time. It's not even the best tag team match in WrestleMania history. Both the TLCs were better, and dare I say, as a match only, right? This match was also better, it was more entertaining. Next up, we had an immunity battle royal, right? This was a great little addition. This was essentially exactly what it sounds like. It was a 9-man battle royal, or one, not 9-man, it was a lot more, I think. But it was basically a bunch of jobbers, a bunch of mid-card jobber types. And the idea was whoever wins this is immune. This person cannot be fired. The winner ended up being Test, right? Everybody else in this match, which included the likes of the APA, Lance Storm, Crash Holly, I think, was in there. Chavo, you know what I mean? These kinds of, like, that level of jobber, right? But it also had a few good ones, like DDP, you know what I mean? Who, at this point, had fallen down the card pretty significantly. And long story short, the way it went down was Test won by eliminating Billy Gunn last. This would then kind of establish Test as a legit mid-carder, because no matter what, Test was going to be around. And this kind of turned into a very short angle afterwards, where Test was basically immune from being fired. So he was like, I'm going to act like a dick, basically. It was pretty great. But the problem here, of course, is that by Test winning, Test being a member of the Alliance, that kind of establishes the fact that the Alliance is not going to win this in the end. But we all knew that, obviously, right? There was like no chance that the WCW was going to win. Now, if you're a kid, you'd be like, oh shit, maybe that is what's going to happen. Then we had a 6-pack challenge for the vacant women's title. This was great because it was 3 women from the WWF versus 3 women from the Alliance. And that right there is all that you need to know, right? Some of the women had turned, and as a result, some of these women were basically, doing their own thing, and there was something to be said here, right? Trish Stratus winning kind of balances it all out, right? The same way that the Christian Al Snow match balances it out the other way. It's like, if Trish Stratus was going to win, they could have given it to, like, I don't know, fucking Jazz or Mighty Molly to keep them safe for their jobs because they were part of the Alliance. But instead, Trish beat Ivory, Jazz, Jacqueline, Lita, and Mighty Molly to become the champion in what was a very short match. Last but certainly not least, we had one of the best matches of all time, in my opinion. The Alliance versus the WWF Survivor Series, motherfucks. So, on the side of Team WWF, we had Jericho, Big Show, The Rock, Kane, and The Undertaker player. This was great. On the side of the Alliance, of course, we had the turncoat Stone Cold Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, RVD, Booker T, and Shane O'Mac, Shane McMahon. So, the match starts, and the first person to be eliminated immediately is Big Show. He gets eliminated by Shane after Big Show eats a bunch of moves, and I think Shane does an elbow drop and pins Big Show, right? Almost immediately afterwards, Shane gets eliminated by Chris Jericho. Then we have Kane eliminating Rob Van Dam. Being eliminated by Rob Van Dam. I read that wrong, cucks. Kane, obviously everyone loves Kane, but it is what it is. RVD eliminates Kane, and then shortly thereafter, The Undertaker, like a moment later, The Undertaker gets eliminated by Kurt Angle. So look at that, motherfucks. Look at that. Now, all of a sudden, the Alliance has 4 people. The only person they've lost is Shane McMahon. And, of course, the WWF is left with only 2 motherfucks, right? Kane, Big Show, and Taker, their biggest guys are gone. And now it's time for The Rock and Chris Jericho to save the WWF. Now, the problem here is that Jericho is a mid-carder. He was a mid-carder that was about to get a push, of course, but he was a mid-carder nevertheless. Also, during this entire angle, there was talks that someone would betray someone, right? The idea was that, let's say The Rock feels like his job is on the line, right? He can betray Vince McMahon and, sign a deal with the devil, right? But the idea was The Rock here was a hero. He didn't like Vince McMahon, but he loved the WWF, motherfuckers. So what happens is, next up, Jericho lays the smackdown on RVD and pins him. I believe he pinned him with a breakdown, which was like, he was trying that out as a finisher. And now, for those that don't know, the breakdown is essentially the skull-crushing finale, right? Kurt Angle then gets eliminated by The Rock via a sharpshooter, cuts. So then after that, we're left in essentially a 2-on-1 situation. We have Jericho and The Rock versus Stone Cold, motherfucks. Stone Cold beats Jericho. At this point, Jericho turns on The Rock. Jericho was a turncoat, but this was presented as a momentary lapse in judgment in the sense that he was like, "Oh, my job's on the line." So Jericho he also had a rivalry with The Rock, so he doesn't have faith in The Rock, so he hits the breakdown on The Rock. Right now, Stone Cold is ready to beat The Rock. Out comes Kurt Angle, who turns out was also working for Vince McMahon the entire time. Kurt Angle decks Stone Cold with the belt, leading to Stone Cold turning around and getting The Rock bottom hit on his monkey ass. 1, 2, 3. The Rock will make you famous. The Rock wins, and he's the last surviving member, the sole survivor of Team WWF. The Rock goes to the turnbuckle and does his pose. And in my personal opinion, motherfuckers, this is one of the greatest moments in The Rock's career and one of the greatest moments in wrestling history, right? Because this marked the definitive end of WCW and ECW as entities, right? They would revive ECW later, but who cares? The idea was WCW was defeated. And who were they defeated by? None other than the number one draw of all time, if you ask me, the People's Champ, The Rock, right? As a kid, I remember marking out to this like a mug, right? Because you never knew, right? You never knew what was going to happen. Like, you knew that Stone Cold wasn't going to get fired, obviously, right? But you had no idea what was going to happen. And you did not want WWF to lose. Like, nobody, even WCW fans at school and stuff, none of them wanted the Alliance to win, right? Because everyone fundamentally at the end of the day was a WWE cuck. So with that being said, that's how that went down. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was very, very intelligent. And it was a good summation of Survivor Series, as well as, of course, the Alliance and Invasion angle, cucks. So I highly recommend this pay-per-view. I'm going to start giving these motherfuckers ratings. I give this one a solid 10 out of 10. I don't even think anything comes close to it in terms of secondary pay-per-views. Maybe Backlash 2000, that's like the only one. Or was it Backlash 2001? The good Backlash where Stone Cold comes back. That one was great too. But I really liked that one because I got to watch it on pay-per-view. And it was one of the first pay-per-views that I got. Right? Because back when I was a kid, I wasn't ordering every pay-per-view. I had to talk to my mom and be like, "Mom, please, this is going to be such a good match, blah, 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 blah." So, she wasn't going to give me every pay-per-view because, they were $30. And, quite frankly, I wasn't paying for it with my allowance or anything. I was just like, "Please, Mom," And also, it was unheard of back then. People don't understand. Back then, it was unheard of to pay $30 to watch wrestling, right? Not unheard of. Of course, it happened. But for us immigrants, we're like, "What? Pay to watch TV?" Anyways, eventually there came a point where I convinced my mom to order every pay-per-view for me, but that's not here nor there. The point is, cucks, this was a great event. I highly recommend it. 10 out of 10 if you ask me. Cuckolds!